something very bad is gonna happen to the Trailblazer when we step into IX's shadow. But what will happen, and how will we gain the path of Nihility if IX the Aeon doesn't actually interact with anyone? How is this going to happen? And what tragedy is going to fall upon our main MC? It definitely seems like most of you think it's going to happen sooner than later. According to the poll I released, you think IX is going to be the next playable path that we interact with. Hey, you never know. But in my honest opinion, it seems fairly obvious to me, with the Stellaron placed within our body as the main character, the fact that we have history with the Stellaron Hunters in the past and probably had our memory wiped to fulfill this mission and connect with each Aeon. This is all part of Elio's script, linked with the Finality, who is trying to prevent the destruction of the universe. Clearly they saw something in the future and is trying to prevent it, and this is the way to do it. Having our memories wiped, and on this path with the Nameless, traveling around with the Astral Express. Now that's a topic for its own video if we are in the process of creating a new Aeon, or whatever we're trying to do with the Stellaron. But regardless of that, we are definitely going to connect with each Aeon at some point, especially the playable ones. Our main MC will have a playable path with each corresponding Aeon that's playable no matter what. And although it's fun to speculate on the order that will happen, at some point we are going to connect with Nihility. It is a very popular playable path, but how we connect with this Aeon's not going to be pretty. I know when it comes to playable paths for a character, it's not always aligned with their lore. A lot of characters use the Nihility path, but let me tell you right now, it's going to be different with the Trailblazer because we don't just gain a path from nothing. We always earn the gaze of that new Aeon before we get that path as playable. But Nihility doesn't really function like that. Just the self-annihilators, people who have accidentally stepped into IX's shadow, and from that moment forth lost their reason to exist, most from extreme circumstances. The biggest example we have to draw from is obviously Acheron. I've went over her backstory and lore many times, and I'm sure most of you know it by now. But her home planet was consumed by IX, the endless encroachment of the shadow of Nihility, causing the two sister planets to fight to the death. The demon god Kame attacking her planet, causing her people to fight back, but ultimately being wiped out. I do have a crazy interesting theory I want to go over with Acheron and how she actually became an emanator of this path, which is insane, but Acheron literally represents the worst case scenario for the Raiden export characters. She lost everyone and everything in her home planet. As far as we know, she's the most notorious self-annihilator, and has probably had some of the most traumatic experiences you could have as a living being. That's all fine and dandy. But if we are going to gain every playable path in Honkai Star Rail, and make no mistake, we are, how on earth are we going to gain Nihility if it doesn't gaze on anyone? Well, it's not hard to deduce that the people that the Trailblazer are closest to are the individuals we've been traveling with on the Astral Express pretty much since we've had our memories wiped and we've been on this journey. At the end of the day, it could be any one of these, but I'm going to rule out some unlikely possibilities. March 7th. We really don't know anything about her origins, and she's way too mysterious of a character to just kill off, or something bad happen. Dongheng seems unlikely too, as he's sort of a clean slate from a Barbator Lune, one of the 5 Dragon Elders of Long the Permanence from the Shanzhou Alliance. Seems also unlikely. Welt Yang is from Honkai Impact 3rd, and it's a possibility, but I don't see them going this route. And Pom Pom is more or less a mascot type character that also acts as a character we gain rewards from. The most likely, which most of you have probably already thought of this already, Himeko. Now how exactly would this play out? Well, it is kind of interesting that we are going to a new planet, Amphorius, that Black Swan recently told us about. And this planet, not even the Trailblaze Aeon has been before, and very few people know of its existence. I think an obvious way for the Trailblazer to get closer to Nihility is something bad happened to Himeko, which actually sort of aligns with her character and the exports. I'm not going to get into much detail, but essentially in Honkai Impact 3rd, Himeko does die, and it's quite tragic. Also, very recently an exported character has been introduced in Genshin Impact as the Pyro Archon, and guess what? Although Natlan and the Pyro Nation is themed around resurrection, she has also died in Genshin Impact, only to be revived 500 years later. But this death also did cause a lot of grief and anguish for that 500 years with their battle with the Abyss. Point being that Himeko, in Honkai Star Rail dying, is actually quite likely. Especially since we've seen in Honkai Star Rail they're not exactly afraid to do this if they need to. Does that mean she'd be dead forever? Probably not. Just call Genius Member 81 and we'll figure something out. But the circumstance to which this happens could be the catalyst for the Trailblazer to gain the Nihility, and perhaps this is an excuse or a reason to bring Acheron back into the story to actually help us control the Nihility. Like in Penacony when we seen that flashback, she helped the fallen Galaxy Rangers who killed a Lord Ravager. They've fallen in battle, and were being consumed by Nihility as self-annihilators, help their souls move on. We also got a glimpse into what the Nihility does to a person, just by Black Swan being a memo keeper, storing memories. That's her whole shtick obviously. She took a quick peek into Acheron's head and probably immediately regretted. One of the coolest trailers in Honkai Star Rail if you ask me. But the point being, Acheron would be a great addition to bring back to help the Trailblazer control the Nihility, because they are obviously going to have to step into IX's shadow to gain that path as playable if this Aeon doesn't gaze upon you. Now how exactly would this play out? Well, what if Himeko's death wasn't just tragic because she died, but what if we're the reason it happens? This could play out in a lot of interesting ways. Maybe we have to face another Lord Ravager or an enemy stronger than we have before, which is only inevitable in the story. There are so many different strong individuals, enemy factions, and emanators we have yet to face. And what if the reason she dies is because we fail to stop it? We fail to save her. This would be a great storyline to ultimately have us step into IX's shadow. And maybe IX might actually be a part of this new chapter and world that we go to. We do know that 3 Aeons are fighting for control of this planet, so the shadow of IX might not be too far lingering. What would even make it even more interesting is if, because we have the Stellaron in our body, perhaps we lose complete control. We outright cause some devastation, causing Himeko to die. This would not only be devastating in the moment, but would cause the remaining Astral Express crew to be very reluctant and hesitant around us. They would lose trust in us, and therefore would be the catalyst to us becoming a self-annihilator. I think they have a lot of interesting ways they could introduce Nihility as a playable path for the Trailblazer, and I think this is the best way to do it. Because the Nameless are the only characters that we've really bonded with on that close of a level. Sure, there are a lot of characters that we have a close bond with on the Lafu, the space station, Yarillo 6, and Penacony, but our Nameless companions are the ones we're always traveling with, and will be going to this new location with. Also, Honkai Star Rail has shown us time and time again, they're not afraid to kill a character in a very big way, leaving us on a big cliffhanger and a quest. Again, this doesn't mean that Himeko has to be dead forever, as Robin, Firefly, Tinyuin all had comebacks. We still have yet to see Tinyuin, but I really do believe this is a great way to introduce the Nihility as a playable path, and something bad leading up to that occurrence. Regardless of what you think will happen, this seems the most likely and plausible to me, and like we talked about at the beginning of the video. What makes this even funnier is the Stellaron Hunters. In their scripts, Elio's aware of what's going to happen. He has to be. Whether the Stellaron Hunters play a direct part in causing it or indirectly, well, it depends. As long as the script stays on track, it doesn't really matter. You notice the Stellaron Hunters intervene in certain chapters, but not so much in others like Yarillo 6. Firefly did play a big part in Penacony, and the Stellaron Hunters all but orchestrated everything on the Xianzhou Lafu. They went out of their way to even have the Antimatter Legion attack the Herta space station at the beginning of the game. The entire point of all of that was just so our memory could be wiped, take the Stellaron, place it within us, and now they are sort of guiding us on our journey. We may not know exactly the plan Elio has, maybe we concocted this plan with Elio before our memory was wiped, but the Stellaron Hunters are all friendly to us like they've known us for a long time, and they will make sure we stay on course for Elio's script. This could play out also interesting they might orchestrate how we gain Nihility, become a self-annihilator, and step into Ix's shadow. Perhaps the Stellaron Hunters are even responsible for getting Acheron to help us escape Nihility. Maybe that is part of the script, and now we know Firefly is acquainted with Acheron. So if something tragic happens to one of our crewmates, most likely Himeko, the Stellaron Hunters will not only be fully aware of this, but try to make sure this happens. Again, it doesn't mean Himeko will stay dead, but similar to Firefly and Robin's deaths, it can have enough shock value and weight, depending on how it plays out, to have us become a self-annihilator, and then, with Acheron's help, be able to control the Nihility and master it as a playable path. Maybe this Stellaron reacts in a unique way with Nihility to begin with, because I don't actually think there's ever been a person that's became a self-annihilator that had a Stellaron inside of them. The Stellarons, the main MacGuffin and cancer of all worlds in Honkai Star Rail. They are honestly so close to being the Honkai at this point. But anyways, I am very curious to read your comments. What do you think will happen with the Trailblazer, and how do you think they will gain the path of Nihility? The current playable ones seem the most likely for us to gaze upon right now, or get associated with. And we only have Erudition, Abundance, the Hunt, and Nihility left for us to resonate with. And I feel like if it was going to be the Hunt, it would have been during the Boris and Fei Xiao patch, during 2.5 in the War Dance. But Lawn of the Hunt gazed upon Fei Xiao instead, so I don't think that's going to be right away. Plus, well, let's be honest, we have a lot more flagships of the Shanzhou Alliance we can visit in future patches for future storylines. So Lawn of the Hunt isn't going anywhere. But when Nihility finally does gaze upon us, I think it's going to be epic. But on that note, I hope you enjoyed the video. Again, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like and subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this, and as always, we will see you all in the next one. Later.